Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Kristen, girl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. Thank you for having me on. You
I
are
cannot tell
just a
you.
shining light.
Oh, I am so excited. My husband was in here just a second ago and I was like, do you know who I'm interviewing right now? Because I just need you to know. Because he's the one who put me on to Whoop Strap like 2 years ago. And honestly, there were days where I was like, I don't want to look.
I
I don't
know. I
want
don't
to
want to
look because
know. I know.
my sleep
Damn.
was so bad. I was up so many times with my toddler.
I
I
know.
don't even want to look at my sleep score.
I
But
know.
we are a Whoop family, a Whoop Strap family. And
Hmm.
we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But most importantly, we're going to be talking about like how do we maintain our energy? How do
Hmm.
we maintain resilience? And how do we kind of gauge our recovery every single day, like, and what are the things, what are the levers that matter most for
Hmm.
us preserving our energy? But
Hmm.
before we get into all of that, I've got so many questions. I would love for
Okay.
you to just start off and just share kind of what was that defining moment or that time where you were like, this is what I want to do. This is the work I'm meant to
Hmm.
do in this world. This is how I'm going to transform the way people take care of themselves. And then you went and you did it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've always studied psychology and physiology, and I was basically taking a lot of those principles and applying them in high performance environments. So I was a collegiate coach and an international coach, and I knew that it was always way more than just the X's and O's. Of course, to coach at that level, you have to be very proficient in the technical aspects of the sport. You have to be very proficient in the tactical aspects of the sport, but you really need to have a foundation and understand the psychological components that really drive our ability to show up and be our best selves, for practice and for, I was working with student athletes, so, and young women. And, it's more than just about the sport and the X's and O's. Is really about building kind of a comprehensive framework to help them understand what are the variables, both the physiological and psychological, that are going to impact or influence their ability to show up as the best version of themselves. So that's really being able to understand, okay, what levers do I pull to maximize attentional capacity, motivation, effective effort, energy production, and building a framework so they understood, hey, I can make this choice and this is going to upgrade or this is going to downgrade. And I know life isn't that binary, but when it comes down to certain foundational behaviors like sleep and fueling, overfueling, underfueling, obviously problematic, right? There's a sweet spot for all of this. It gives us a foundation to kind of show up and be able to be the best version of ourselves. So I really spent my entire career building a framework for my student athletes. And I taught a class at Princeton University as well, aptly named performance optimization. So I was working with students as well, as student athletes, and really trying to help folks understand what are these psychophysiological interactions and what is the taxonomy. If we need to think about, I want to manage my energy as effectively as possible and be able to kind of show up when it matters the most. How do I need to live? What are those behaviors? And that's really been the kind of framework for all of the research that I've been doing over the course of the last, 6 years, has been really trying to wrestle the ground. What is this taxonomy? What behaviors are the most predictive of physiological and psychological functioning? And we can talk more about some of that research today.
Let's do that. Let's do that. As I was kind of queuing you up for my audience, and I felt like you already knew my amazing ladies, my amazing community, and these are women
Yeah,
who, yeah, they're
insane.
incredible. They're holding it together. They're doing all the things. They got the biggest to-do list, and what they're really craving is they just want the energy to be able to do the things not only that they love, but also that they're, to serve their community, to serve the people that matter most to them. But not gonna lie, feeling a bit depleted, at times feeling run down,
Yeah.
and maybe aren't very clear on what exactly are those levers that we have got to commit to, that we've got to double down on, especially in the kind of that interception, that transition of perimenopause, where
Mhm.
hormones are not necessarily predictable anymore and are definitely playing a role in how we are feeling day in and day out.
Yeah, I mean, understanding hormones, I think, is really important, and I think about it, I think about the sleep and circadian hormones, right? So, melatonin and cortisol. You want your melatonin signal and your cortisol signals to be as strong as humanly possible, right? And there's some behaviors that are associated with strong melatonin signaler and strong cortisol signaling. And when those aren't firing, energy is a problem, right? So if we are not getting that bolus of cortisol in the morning, fatigue, anxiety, depression, right? So one of the ways to ensure for that cortisol is, of course, to get the requisite night's sleep. So I know, I've got 2 kids. I've got a full-time job. I totally get it. Like I've got lots of stuff going on. I understand. So I just want to lay that out there just because I don't want to sound tone deaf, right? As I talk about some of these things, because I have to manage all of this as well in
All the
terms of figuring
things.
out, yeah, how am I going to actually spend the time in bed that I need
Kristen,
to?
you are doing the most.
No, it is absolutely not a competition. It is all relative. We're all doing a ton of shit. But I will say that, my life's work has really been about, okay, I want to be able to do a lot of things and I want to be able to do it at high quality. And what are the levers that I need to pull? So morning light is absolutely central, right? So when we think about kind of these hormones, right, and getting that signaling going, we need to get that bolus of light within 20 minutes of waking up. When we've got kids, that can be tough, but get their little asses outside if you can and get that sunshine. They need the sunshine too, right? And I think, do a 5-minute nature walk in the yard when your dog's running around, eat your breakfast outside if you can, but try to get yourself and your family outside if at all possible. And I know the morning routine can be really chaotic, but to the degree that you can organize your morning routine, so you just get outside in the natural light for 5 minutes, it will go a long, long way toward your hormone health. The other piece to that is really try to restrict light after the sun goes down. And I know some of these behaviors sound a little bit hard, but they are democratically available, right? That sunlight, that natural light's available to all of us. And I think restricting light is really important for children and teenagers and adults. It's very, very important. We haven't adapted to blue light. So when we talk about the melatonin signaling, so cortisol is that wakefulness, they kind of book in the day. Melatonin is the kind of the darkness hormone that's going to make us feel sleepy. So if we're not restricting light, our melatonin signal will not be as strong. Okay. So we suppress that melatonin signal. And we press that melatonin signal, that means that we're likely not going to get into these deeper stages of sleep at night. So that 2 a.m. wake up is a product of a weaker cortisol and melatonin signaling. Back to cortisol, because I think a lot of women, especially in that perimenopause, are waking up at 2 and 3 a.m. So what happens with cortisol, it will start to rise at around 2 or 3 a.m. So if we have not managed our stress throughout the day, we already have, imagine, your gas tank of cortisol and it's totally chock full and that lots of stress right throughout the day. And it's not kind of managed proactively. That ends up kind of getting into your nighttime, right? Into your sleep. And what happens is you've already got a lot of cortisol. So you get that little bolus of cortisol, that little rise. And what it does is it wakes you up. So if you are waking up around 2 or 3, a lot of it, you can probably trace it back to the light, the morning and or not enough evening restriction of light, and stress management throughout the day. So those are kind of 3 behaviors that will impact the quality of your sleep at night. And if you do them consistently and you get that light and you restrict light and lead up to bed and you manage stress proactively throughout the day, you'll be much better in terms of your sleep at night.
Awesome. Now I want to talk a little bit about restricting light in the evening, because I know people are wondering, so, is that, like, I always
Yeah.
think, like, when I say cut down alcohol, they're like, is that 1 glass of
Yeah.
wine? Is that
Yeah.
2 glasses of wine? What does that even mean? So, like,
Yeah.
for us in our house, we have specific lighting. We have lighting that drops, like we have dim lights. I am like a vampire at night. If there is harsh light in my house after a certain hour, I'm just like, ah, like it is
Same.
just intense for me. And so our bathroom lighting, bedroom lights, Kingston just has a little teeny little night light that this is my toddler. We have blackout curtains in all of the rooms.
Good.
And so we are really mindful that lights go off, like and
That's
they're
amazing.
not fully off, but we have super, super dim light, blue lights cut off, TV lights cut off, no TVs in the bedrooms. Obviously, we're doing a lot of that where it's not full dark. We wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was curious as to, is there, and obviously right now it's getting darker later, because it's that time of the year. But how much do we need to go into this realm? Is there a cutoff time for screens? What are the recommendations around that? So people just have a good sense of, okay, this is what I need to really start working towards.
Well, before I do that, I'll tell you the morning protocol first in terms of specifics. So yeah, so the brighter it is outside. So within 20 to 30 minutes of waking up, you want to get outside. 100,000 lux of photon energy is really what you're after. So that means if it's bright outside, like good, the sun's out, it's not super cloudy, 5 to 10 minutes will do. If it's really cloudy, you're going to need to spend a little bit more time outside, 15 to 20 minutes, which I know for a morning routine, non-weekend is going to be really challenging. But if you can just do a minimum effective dose, I guess, regardless of sky conditions, would be about 5 minutes.
Okay.
In the evening, you want to start restricting light around 2 hours before you intend to sleep, and maybe even 3. So basically, once the sun goes down, you want to start making sure that you're not exposing yourself to a lot of overhead light. So you want to just really, and I think you've got it right. You just want to be able to safely move around, but you really want to try to mimic that, kind of what you'd have just with moonlight, which I know is not a lot of light, but that's really what our system is craving, right? That's what that's what we prefer, right? Is this darkness. And when we talk about melatonin signaling, that's a big piece of it, right? Like our suprachiasmatic nucleus. So the control center of our brain that's located in the hypothalamus is basically waiting for that dark signal, right? They're anticipating that cue. So if we're in, our living room and there's overhead lights and there's TVs and there's phone screens, and you're basically telling your body that it's time to be awake. And when you're time to be awake, what's the hormone for awakeness? It's cortisol. Stress, sympathetic activation, right? We'll talk probably a little bit about the nervous system, but we want to make sure that, leading into bed, we're telling our brain, every cell, tissue, organ in our body, we're telling them that it's time to chill, it's time to relax. And the only way they know to chill and relax and do their thing is with that darkness signal. So we just got to keep it low. I would even say in children's bedrooms, even just 6 lux of light has been shown to interfere with sleep. And I think another note on that, there's an excellent paper that came out recently that basically showed any light between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. was enough to disrupt next day dopamine system. So light during that time is actually pro-depressive. So 11 p.m. is kind of that time where you definitely want to be very much asleep by that point. And I think that research kind of helps us back into, all right, what is actually the appropriate time to be asleep? And it's absolutely by 11 p.m. and certainly probably before that, if we look at some of the other hunter-gatherer kind of literature, and which I can talk about if you want.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. And yes, for us, there's no night light in his room. Then we have a
Good.
little teeny little light in the room, and that's it. No, but there's no light because it doesn't work. It absolutely, even just getting him to bed, if the light is on, it doesn't work.
I know.
And so we have a no, we can hear him, so we can go and grab him because he can't see anything either. Poor thing,
I know.
I'm like, we better get in there before he tries to get off that bed. So, but same thing in our room as well. We just noticed, it's really, really noticed was that when our son was in our room, which is half the night, I'm not going to pretend like he isn't.
Yeah.
Is when there was light disturbances coming through, that he was waking up and that we were waking up. And so that's how we knew that. And I think that, maybe when we're really that young, we are just extra more sensitive, because we're new in this world. There was just a little bit of light coming in certain areas, and it hadn't bothered us as adults. At least we didn't think so. But then it was really disrupting our son, who was then waking me up. And we have cardboard because we have these beautiful windows up above our big windows that are just for.
Oh yeah.
So we put car. It's ugly, but I was like, how do we cover these things? And so
I know.
That's our rooms are completely dark out, and
amazing. Love to hear that.
Much better sleep. We get much better sleep because of it. Anyway, I just wanted to share that little disclaimer of
I love it.
We learned the hard way.
I know.
It absolutely had a profound impact on him. Definitely was having a profound impact on us. And yeah, I want to talk about what it means to be in bed and asleep by 11 p.m. for sure.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I think as a society, this might sound harsh, but I think sometimes we rationalize things.
Oh, I did. I was this year.
In the sense of, there's one thing to prefer to be awake, and modernity makes it easy for us to be awake, right? We have access to food 24/7. We have, Netflix shows that are just wild and so fun and hard not to watch. We like to read at night. We like to do things at night. And I think specifically for moms and dads who are grinding all day at work, and, they come home and they're fixing dinner and getting their kids to bed. And then finally they're like, I have some me time. And they're like,
an hour.
I know. And then like, oh, I like
Maybe.
actually need to go to bed. So I totally understand all of that. So notwithstanding some of those challenges, I'm just going to tell you what is optimal. So basically, I think folks have preferences, right? So we talk about this notion of chronotype. And I think society, when they talk about chronotype and culture, there's this thinking that, we've got people who, bias toward like a 2 a.m., that's like a late chronotype. And that's when they want to go to bed. And then, medium might be like midnight. And then other folks, the early like morning larks are more at like 9:30 or whatever. But when you look at the research on hunter gatherers and like their natural patterns, and then you look at some of the research where they're throwing just normal people like us into Colorado with no artificial lights, like none of the trappings of modern society, all of those folks are falling asleep after 72 hours within about 30 minutes of one another. So I don't think that really this kind of, not that I totally dismiss chronotypes, but I think that the differences in when we feel sleepy are probably not as big as we think. I think they've become big because we have artificial lights and we can
push it.
bypass that signaling, right? Of melatonin. We can stay, we stay awake. But with that comes some very deleterious effects on our health that impact our metabolism, impact our fertility, make us, increase our proneness for cancer. There are serious repercussions, right? And if we think about light just as a concept, it is, it's Dr. Samer Hattar. He's a chief section light for the NIH for chronobiology for the NIH. And, he says, take a photon, not a pill. And he says that because, that is how like strong a mediator light is on our system, and before you want to, in order to rule out medication, you want to make sure that you're have the correct relationship with light. And that means being in phase with the natural light dark cycle. So life corrects itself pretty quickly if you can create that alignment, but that means making some hard choices, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Making some hard choices. I started this year and sleep. I mean, I've chosen some hard paths in terms of
Mm,
mothering and co-sleeping and whatnot. And
yeah.
so there was a like conflicting, priorities. I'm choosing my son over me. And so what
Mm,
I had learned from that is that I just have to be in bed earlier. If I'm going to get the sleep quality that I really need, I've got to be in
mhm.
bed by 9 because I
Yeah.
know that I'm going to be awakened. We're still in that place
Yeah.
where I'm going to be awakened a couple times in the nighttime. That's just the way it is. It's just how
Yep.
it's gone. And in order for me to make it up, but there was a point this year where I was feeling really great because I'd been doing this for a while. I was feeling really well resourced, and I had joined a couple courses, and I was like, I'm doing these like really amazing kind of what I considered life-giving, like really just up leveling all the
Mm,
things I was doing. And so I was staying up a little bit later. I was staying up till 10:30 or, and
mhm.
a month of this, or like even less than a month of this, I started noticing, I mean, obviously my recovery scores were not good.
Start to
I was
dip.
starting to
Yeah.
burn out. I started to feel like I knew. And I knew that the lever that I was pulling, the wrong lever, was the lack of sleep.
Mm,
And even though I was getting out in sunlight in the morning, like I was doing all the things on the back
yeah.
end, to bump up that cortisol awakening response, but it just wasn't. It wasn't
Wasn't
enough to make
enough.
up for the lack of sleep I was losing, even the hour and a half that I was losing. And it's,
Mhm.
you just got to get real with
Mhm.
yourself. And you said, make the hard choices of like, what is really going to serve me in the long run? And it's going to
Yeah.
be the sleep piece. And again, the numbers don't lie. Like my Whoop was like, oh, 20. I mean, when I was seeing 25%, 24% recoveries, I was like, uh-oh, like
Whoa.
it was not
Yeah.
looking good. 44, 39, 34,
I
heart rate
know.
variability way lower than it should be in the 20s.
And that's the beauty of the data
Yeah.
that, your data, your body kind of probably recognized that you weren't adapting to that lifestyle as well as maybe you perceived that you were adapting.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't, that's what's great about data is you can't always perceive your own declines, physical, mental, emotional. It kind of just happens. That's what's so insidious about it. It just happens really slowly,
It's kind of like
So
blood sugar,
it's,
right?
yeah,
You just have no idea.
you don't know, and I think that's where it can kind of, you're like start to see this downward trend in your heart rate variability and, maybe increases in resting heart rate, your respiratory rates maybe a little bit higher. And you're like, all right, I still feel okay, but you start to see this degradation. And I think that's the great thing about data is you can actually course correct before you start really spiraling. and before your system really gets out of whack. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I love about the data. Life changes, you have kids, you might go through a divorce, you're just life changes, and the data can just give you a sense of how you're adapting to those changes and where to course correct, what pressure points in your life you need to kind of push in order to kind of get yourself back on course. And that was cool to see where you recognized, hey, I'm actually pulling all these other levers. I'm exercising, feeling really fulfilled professionally, and I'm getting the sunlight, and but I need to spend more time in bed, and there's just no way around that. And I think
Yeah.
that was cool.
There was just no way around that. There was no
Yeah, I
need,
know.
metabolically eating, optimizing my blood sugar. There was no way
I
around the
know.
lack of sleep I was getting. And I think a lot of us think we really can get away with it, but we can't.
And I think there is, once your kids kind of get out of that early toddler phase and they're sleeping through the night, then it really becomes, all right, how can I spend less time in bed? That's really, and that's where sleep consistency has really emerged as like kind of the canary in the coal mine for mental and physical health resilience. A lot of the research that I'm doing right now is looking at mental and physical health resilience and sleep consistency. So really minimizing that sleep-wake variability has emerged as the most predictive behavior of both mental and physical health resilience. We just published a paper in Military Medicine I can send, looking at sleep-wake time. But I think for folks who are thinking, okay, how do I get my hormones on track? Minimizing night to night variability is the path, because there's a kind of a direct relationship between night to night variability and adiposity, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. So when you think about it, I go like this because I'm thinking about the model in my head. But when you look at night to night variability, that is, it's been shown to have an enormous impact on metabolism. So and also night to night variability reduces melatonin production as well. You can also think about it from reproductive health. That is one of the top three things that influences fertility and uterine receptivity, is the degree to which you are stabilizing your sleep-wake time. So just something for your listeners in terms of like, a
How
core
important.
behavior. It's just so important. Yeah, I know. I tell everyone, but it's
yeah,
hard.
and I
It's a
think
hard behavior.
And when you're talking about, just so everyone is clear, when she's talking about, sleep variability, it's a lack thereof. We do not want sleep variability. We want consistency across the board. So you are going to bed consistently at 9 p.m. every single night. You're not going to bed at 9 p.m. 2 nights and then 11 p.m. the other 2 nights. And then, you're going to push a 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. on Saturday night. It's consistency across the board, just like you are out in sun, just like you're walking every single day, just like you're taking your supplements, just like you're eating nourishing foods. Sleep has got to be equally as consistent as all of those other things. And I think this is what I call an unpopular truth or an unpopular opinion. I don't think anyone should hear this, but I just want this to be heard, because I need to make sure this is soaking into me. I can be a little inconsistent. And so this is probably, if I'm walking away with anything today, it's this.
Yeah. And I think, there have been some studies that show, there's a great study done on firefighters who obviously have the most, egregious, and I'm sure there's some folks who listen to your podcast who are shift workers. And what was cool about this study, it was a feasibility study looking at time restricted eating. And this is one of the other, you just listed, the 3 other circadian kind of behaviors. Are eating windows is kind of another kind of anchoring circadian behavior, in the sense that we want to make sure that we're consolidating all of our calories in a single window. So basically this study looked at firefighters who have all these crazy schedules, and they asked the experimental group to just pick a window that they could stick to. It was either 8 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours. So find a feeding window that you can stick to. And then the control group, they could do whatever they want, but both groups got the Mediterranean diet. So it's hard to parse out like the effects of the Mediterranean diet. So in that regard, it wasn't a perfectly designed study, but the feeding window folks, the individuals who consolidate, so number one, feasibility, the firefighters were able to adhere to one of these 3 restricted time eating windows. And those, the time restricted groups showed better metabolic outcomes than the group who just did the Mediterranean diet without the feeding window. So what I'm saying is that for folks who can't stabilize their sleep-wake time, i.e. get really good sleep consistency, this time restricted eating could potentially be another lever to offset the effects of an unstable sleep-wake time. So that was really cool to see. Another factor that can kind of, that's really important is exercise, clearly,
Yes.
in terms of the impact on, metabolism. So,
It's amazing. I also think of exercising as energy signaling.
yes.
In a way of creating more energy. It's telling your body that you want more energy. I want to go back to the intermittent fasting piece because one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I talk a lot about here on the show, because I know that I know I'm a recovering stressaholic. And I am not
Totally.
even a recovered type A person. But I am a recovered stressaholic, and I can see myself start to veer in that, and I know
I
how
know.
to, again, what had happened to me in February, March, and I was like, oh, I know this pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I kind
I
of
know that girl.
I glittered it up with like, ooh, my life's purpose. I'm like, I've been glittering it up with that forever. And so I could see the things, and I was like, you need to pull this back. You need to do the things that you know to do consistently to get yourself back to a good place. But one of the things that I talk to about women is having a circadian based eating window.
Mm-hmm.
So 12-12, even
Mm-hmm.
if they're high stress, they are feeling high burnout, that I still feel that consistent 12-hour window is a pretty safe window for us to operate in order to supporting our bodies and supporting our metabolism without stressing our body even
Yep.
more. So I wanted to know where you landed
Mhm.
on that.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And yeah, and just from a semantics, intermittent fasting, I think, and you see a lot of this on social media. There's intermittent fasting and time restricted eating are kind of two
They're
different things. And
different.
I think the way you're talking about it is perfect in that time restricted eating isn't about calorie restriction. It is about a consolidated eating window, right? Where intermittent fasting kind of implies that you're restricting calories in some way. So I couldn't agree more. I think for women who are going through perimenopause, or just I think women who have a naturally occurring cycle, there are going to be moments in that cycle that longer fasting periods are going to have a deleterious effect on your hormones, on your energy levels. Personally, I'm not a doctor. You are, so you can confirm this. I would definitely not recommend that. I think the 12-12 is really safe. And most Americans are actually eating over the course of a 15-hour window. And as we both know, digestion is a parasympathetic activity, right? So when we're asking our body to digest food, which is very expensive, it takes a lot of effort to digest, we're basically diverting all of the resources away from rejuvenation and recovery and all the things that need to be happening cellularly to get us ready for the next day. So we really want to make sure that we're being super thoughtful that all of our calories are kind of in this 12-hour, 10 or 12-hour period,
Yes, yeah.
and that we're really making sure that we're kind of segmenting out our protein over the course of the day as well. And we want to make sure our breakfast and lunch are kind of our most robust, nutrient dense meals, because that's when we're metabolically most primed to
Yes, to burn it,
to
use
use
it.
those, use those convert those nutrients. So yeah, I think like in terms of principle, I think that's dead on. I would say that we see at population level data. We're actually about to launch a huge time restricted eating, the largest study ever done. So hopefully anyone on Whoop can participate. So you'll be getting a little prompt
Nice.
about that. I know, I'm like super excited. But I think what's important about time restricted eating is that you end. So your final calorie is 2 to 3 hours before you intend to sleep.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. My audience is like, oh girl, that's all she talks about.
I know. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I always say 3 hours. I like 3 hours.
Okay.
And I like, especially women, we are, especially depending on parts of our cycle where we're more
Mm-hmm.
insulin resistant. Obviously, we are more insulin resistant in the evening. I like people to, and especially that, gosh, by the time most of us are in our mid to late 40s, we have at least one marker of metabolic dysfunction. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
concerned about what's going on with women, especially as we head into
Yeah.
perimenopause and menopause. And so one of my big recommendations is 3 hours before
Mm-hmm.
heading to bed, the last bite of food. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can roll that back, our cutoff here in our house is 6 p.m. Everybody's
Oh,
done. And then we go
just
for a walk as a
makes
family
me, oh, I
afterwards.
love that.
Yeah, because it's still sunny outside. Sun isn't even
Yeah.
set here yet. And then it's bedtime
Mm-hmm.
routine after we get
I love
back
it.
from our walk. And so
I mean, the evening walk on insulin, there's been
it's
lots of
amazing.
it's incredible. Yeah. It's just so, and I think people, the default maybe thinking is like, oh, after you eat, you just sit, but like, that's like energy, like that's the time to kind of get out and about and socialize, get that last like moment of activity before you actually, really, settle down for the night. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's a
and it's
great routine.
connection, aided
Mhm.
digestion.
That's
It's an
right.
easy walk, where maybe you are catching the sunset. I don't know, like
Yeah. I mean, that
whatever
would be
that may be.
optimal.
Yeah, optimal. And to me, it's just such a wonderful. Again, we're trying to really cultivate these habits and this legacy
Mm,
for our son because we want these to be things that he grows up in. Like he gets time. Obviously, he's getting time with us either way, but it's
yeah.
outside and we're moving and it's really
Mhm.
lovely and it's very sweet. And it's just a part of like we eat, we finish our dinner, we do our thing, we do our walk, and then we move into bath time or whatever thing we're
Oh,
doing. So
I love it.
and that just really gives us that. And then everyone goes to bed, even him goes to bed with pretty much fully digested,
Mhm.
and because I know that, when we're messing with blood sugar heading into our sleep routine,
Mhm.
that it absolutely can have a profound impact on melatonin and really help, affect our deep restful sleep as well.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm concerned about. Like, is blood sugar playing a role here when your sleep is being disrupted?
Yeah, I mean, I think mechanistically, there's no question, that there's going to be an impact when you're having to digest food. You're basically your heart rate is going to have to go up, right? And when your heart rate goes up, it's going to pull you out. And you might see this when you look at stress monitor on Whoop, right? Like when you kind of look, move your hand over your sleep, those little spikes are basically kind of heart rate spikes. So,
Mm-hmm.
the more, and again, the more digestion is going to be stressful, right? So the more kind of stress you're putting on during sleep, the more that's going to be reflected in your heart rate. And when your heart rate is up, when it should be down, that means you're not going to be getting into that deeper stage of sleep. So you're going to end up with more light sleep when you're digesting food, when you drank alcohol. So yeah, so lots of different types of behaviors are going to impact, what's happening during sleep for sure, and your ability to get into these deeper restorative stages of sleep.
Mm. I do want to bring up alcohol because I know
Mm,
you guys I know Whoop just a really, and I've been knowing. Like we've seen numbers.
yeah, I
Actually, one of
know.
the reasons why I decided to completely shelve alcohol entirely this entire year was we were in Hawaii and I had one Mai Tai. Again, we were eating dinner by 6, and it was probably maybe the second drink I had this year. I had 2 drinks this year, and I was wearing all the devices. I was wearing the continuous glucose monitor. I was wearing I was wearing all the things, the
Yeah.
Whoop strap, and I was tracking my heart rate variability. I was tracking everything throughout the
Mhm.
nighttime. And sure enough, even though I supposedly got good sleep, like we went to bed
Mhm.
early, we were tanked the next day. It was so, I
Wow.
mean, the numbers do not lie. And even though I didn't
Yeah.
feel super off, I knew that my numbers were significantly off. And
Yeah.
that was just it. I remember sitting on the beach with my son and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with
Yeah.
this for the rest of the year. And I'll reevaluate later at the end of the year. And I just love that I made that decision, but I was able to really kind of double down on that decision based on the data that I was looking at. And I know you guys have a lot of data on this.
We really do.
I'm
And
not the only one.
yeah, and there's no fancy statistics required to like, it's very clear that alcohol has a very negative effect on all the
All of
markers.
it.
Yeah. I mean, even though it's of course a sedative, so folks feel like, oh, I get into the deeper stages of sleep, but when you look at sleep, people are in very, very light sleep. And just because you're passed out doesn't mean you're actually getting, good sleep. And when you don't get into those deeper stages of sleep, you don't release human growth hormone. Like, all the magic that happens hormonally over the course of sleep, you're really depriving yourself when you're digesting and when you're having metabolized alcohol. So yeah, you're going to definitely see a tank in your recovery and a lot of light, crappy sleep.
I so
Not to
appreciate you
mention,
sharing.
like, feeling pretty,
Feeling pretty crappy
less
too.
capacity tomorrow. Yeah.
I just wanted to just have you share on that as well, because I know
Mm,
that this is very much something nobody wants to hear, but
I
we
know.
just need to be hearing it more and more from everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't mind throwing myself into the bus personally,
Yeah.
in getting people to move in that direction. The other thing I wanted to speak into is resilience. I know this is where
Mm,
you really shine, and talking specifically about the autonomic nervous system
mhm.
and what are some of the, I mean, sleep, obviously consistent. If we walked away from anything today, everybody,
Yeah.
is
Yes.
consistent sleep every single day. This is a major lever
As much as
for,
possible.
yes, for mood support, for mental health support, for
Mhm.
stress support, for energy and mitochondrial support. Let's just talk a little bit about throughout the day. I mean, now
Mhm.
that we've got the stress monitor, luckily
Yeah.
I'm not seeing big numbers unless I'm doing big time workouts. So that makes
Good,
me really
good.
happy. But I know that that wasn't back in the day. Like I would have probably seen this thing going off the Richter
Yeah.
scale all the time. And so what have been some of the biggest levers that you have seen that will move the needle in helping us reduce the amount of stress, that we're experiencing
Mm.
throughout the day so that we are feeling like we feel less anxiousness, we feel less
Mhm.
overwhelmed, we feel less run down. It's kind of the
Yep.
the feel I get from so many people. I just don't have it in me.
Yeah. So definitely fixing the circadian rhythms first, right? That's our
Yes.
foundation, right? So, and when we talk about, hey, it's if we want to, fix our sleep, we have to fix our circadian rhythms first. If we want to fix our reproductive health, we got to fix our circadian rhythms first. Like, you look at all that is the place to start. So really do everything you can to just test pulling those levers out the best that you can. The other piece that's really important, and we talked about the role of cortisol and its role during our wakefulness, and so important, right? But we want to make sure that it doesn't wake us up at night. And a lot of that is how we're dealing with and managing stress throughout the day. So I always said, I used to say this with my student athletes, and this is what I practice as an athlete is, really starting to building the skill of identifying stress and then building in many moments of rest proactively throughout the day. Because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have stress accumulate throughout the day to the point where you get to 20 minutes before you go to bed and you're just a stress ball, right? And coming down, even if you can get yourself to a place where you come down from that, it will invariably rear its head at that 2, 3 a.m. and wake you up. Or you'll end up having, again, when you look at stress monitor, you can see those heart rate fluctuations. If you're not managing stress, invariably your heart rate is going to be elevated during your sleep, which is going to make for a more fragmented sleep experience, right? Which is going to, again, not yield the restoration or recovery that you need. So you kind of get into this vicious cycle. So managing stress throughout the day, and what you can do is, if you think about it from, high, medium, low, so you can kind of measure the stress. If it was really high, but you were super jazzed about what you're doing, you probably only need 90 seconds of just some breath work where you're calming, you're activating the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, you're calming your nervous system, bringing your heart rate down. 90 seconds will probably do it. If it was really high stress, but kind of bad stress where, you're like, okay, you didn't feel good. Maybe it was a argument with a colleague or, whatever it might have been, or a disagreement, or you just felt like you didn't have the resources to do what you need to do at that moment. That's going to require a little bit longer of a de-stress. And, that might be, sitting for 5 minutes and just doing your best to quiet your mind. Or maybe it's just journaling, just writing in a journal kind of your thoughts, and maybe centering around gratitude, in that moment, just
Mhm.
being like, all right, like, what am I grateful for right now? I don't have the perspective. I feel my heart rate elevated. What can I do to kind of bring myself back? Think of a time where you received, gratitude, where someone, wrote you this beautiful thank you note. I have like this little box where I have, thank you notes that my student athletes have written me, or, really beautiful cards that my kids have sent. And I just kind of open that box and I read it. And sure enough, within minutes, I'm like, I feel so good. So I think that's also a really great tool. But the key skill is basically to do that proactively throughout the day. Even if you're just walking from one meeting to the next, just doing, a double inhale followed by an extended exhale. Just doing that 3 or 4 times can get you back to center. I think it's stress mitigation throughout the day so it doesn't accumulate in a negative way is in a really core principle for energy management.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. One of the other things I love too, I'm always thinking about sending the brain safety signals that everything is safe in
Yes,
the
that's
world.
exactly right.
But I love
Yes.
oxytocin for her
Mm.
majestic powers and abilities. And I kind of think that you're probably opening up some oxytocin when you're looking at the cards. But
Yep.
I love hugging my son, or I love
Hmm.
sending voice memos to my best friends, or calling somebody, just
Hmm.
creating connection. I know for women, we head into tend and befriend mode so well.
Hmm.
And that can be so I love that. So just being one, identifying, being
Hmm.
aware, but
Hmm.
then you know what, just preemptively have these things in place, because
Hmm.
most likely I always say that this modern day life is not conducive for happy hormones.
I
um
know it really isn't.
Hormones are
And
just like, ah, like
I
what
know.
what am I having to do right now? Like, and they're doing the best they can with what they got in the moment that they're in. but that they really deserve us to really try to provide as many safety signals as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we don't really need like to induce stress that much. Honestly, there's plenty of that out there for us.
So, so
But
true.
yeah, and I think like, that, and that's kind of a strategy to manage acute stress. And I think if you really feel like there's chronic stress, again, go back to the physiology, you look at the circadian stuff, the sleep stuff, how are you training? How are you moving your body? It's really important. There's lots of endorphins that come from just exercising. So getting out and just doing, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, even if you're just jogging for 20 seconds and walking for 10 seconds and then jogging for 10 seconds, just do that 6 times and you'll get this shot of, endorphins, or, just start to move around, just lift stuff in your house, and, I think there's movement is really key. And sometimes that is the solution, that it's not maybe sitting and meditating. It's actually going out for like a vigorous walk, and burning some energy, can also be a strategy to mitigate stress. So exercise as a way to mitigate stress is beautiful. And I love the idea of like just these little exercise snacks. I don't know
Oh,
who
I'm
said
a
that.
big exercise snacker. I
Okay.
love to exercise snack.
I don't know who invented that, but
So
I think it's
awesome.
just such a
I'm
beautiful
totally
way.
using it.
Okay. Little exercise snacks where you just like, maybe you just, sometimes I'll just literally run up and down my stairs in my house for like, I'm just do this 4 times, and then, all right, back to Zoom. But just, some burpees, just some squats,
Burpee
I think,
squats. I do
yeah,
jack
just
squats.
little calf raises.
Yeah. Jumping
But yeah,
jacks,
but
just bust out 20 to 30 of those. Feels so good.
but when we talk about, sleep pressure, right? Like exercise, there's a relationship between ATP and adenosine, right? Adenosine is kind of a byproduct of ATP. So when we're, exercising, exerting throughout the day, invariably we're going to end up sleeping better at night. So again, we talk about sleep, movement, and exercise during the day is just really critical and releases tons of stress. So building that in is also a great strategy.
A quick question for you regarding exercise in general, because I know that even like women, sometimes again, we do tend to overdo, and
Yeah.
we as in
Yeah.
me. I tend to overdo. And so I was curious, based on, obviously the cortisol releasing that's happening in the morning, is there an ideal time for us, particularly
Mhm.
as women, to work out? I'd love to know that. I'd like to believe I know the answer to that, but I would love for you to speak into it, where the juice is worth the squeeze for us without creating burnout.
So there is a circadian component to exercise. So it does entrain our circadian rhythms. I would say, anytime you can exercise, it probably offsets anything else. So, getting in your exercise is really important. I would say in terms of optimizing, if you don't want to fall asleep later or earlier, if you want to just maintain when you fall asleep, basically the circadian dead zone for exercise is like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So basically, if you exercise during that window, you're not going to affect your sleep at all. So it doesn't move around your circadian rhythms at all. If you want to optimize for strength, generally in the afternoon, our temperature is going to be at the highest, and we're pretty much we're primed to kind of do a strength workout. So from a performance standpoint, 3:30, 4 p.m., 4:30ish, 5 p.m. is a great time to work out to optimize strength. And endurance, pretty much you could do any time. It seems from the literature there might be some benefits in the morning, but I wouldn't recommend for women to train fasted. I know that that's kind of been popular, but that adds, when you talk about kind of adding stress on top of stress, I think for women, definitely, in the luteal phase. So when we're leading into menses, called out of menses, and the ovulation phase. So basically those 2 weeks leading into menses and ovulation, we want to definitely, I would not fast, because you're already a little bit depleted. Your body's working very, very hard. And that's a time frame where we just want to be like, as kind and gentle to our body as possible. So we don't want to layer stress on top of stress, which training fasted is layering stress on top of stress.
Good to
So
know.
yeah.
And where I've seen that, like on a continuous glucose monitor, when I have trained in a fasted state, I will see a really big spike.
Big spikes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
spike. That's
Yeah.
where it'll happen is if I go into a workout, especially a big weight training workout,
Hmm.
and I haven't had anything to eat,
Hmm.
I will hit I'll hit a 30 milligrams or plus spike
Yep.
from the liver having to do something about that. So
It's
just
stressful.
yes, it's stressful. So I just
Hmm.
wanted to mention you'll see that you can actually see that on a CGM, and you'll see it also on your Whoop as well if you're wearing a Whoop strap. So
Hmm.
just interesting information. I always
Yep.
find, that some of the women I recommend is because cortisol is already where it needs to be. I usually recommend a morning workout, but not a fasted morning workout,
Yep.
so that they're taking advantage of the cortisol that they have and they're not ramping it up later on. And this is someone who's dealing with stress already. I'm not trying to drive
Hmm.
more stress to the system. I don't know. That's just kind of been some of the research that I've seen, at least in my practice, of like if we
Hmm.
can get the workout done unfasted, you can have a little snack, workout, and you take advantage of, especially in perimenopause, where you get that workout done in the morning, you kind of start, you wind down in the afternoon.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that there actually is any research to support that, but I feel like just understanding what's happening with hormones and that seems to me like a super logical way to think about exercise prescription and timing. I would say coffee is another consideration when we talk about kind of circadian things. Obviously, coffee afternoon after 12 p.m. could, impact your sleep onset. So you want to make sure that you're avoiding that. But also and this is so hard. I just want to have coffee as soon as I wake up, but I try to delay it 90 minutes. So I allow that natural cortisol to kind of do its thing.
Mm.
I think especially for women who are already having a lot of these kind of hormone issues and feeling and sleep issues, I would absolutely wait to have your first cup of coffee 90 minutes after you wake up.
Mm.
It's so important.
Hmm. I know you're just another I usually wait 60 minutes. I'll
I
go 60 minutes. And I drink a 30-ounce thing of
water.
water. Yeah. So water is the first
Perfect.
thing I do out the
Hmm.
gate. And then I wait
Amazing.
my 60 minutes and then I'm just like, just drink all the coffee.
I do the water too. And in my luteal phase as well, like I put especially in the summer, I'll put a little salt, a little element.
I do element. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my favorite's raspberry salt. We do raspberry salt, orange salt. I'll do one before, usually I'll do a half in that. And
Hmm.
then after my workout, I'll do the other half too. So except because I'm still breastfeeding that
Oh, dang.
I lend towards, oh yeah, all the things, girl, all the things.
You,
And so,
I love it. You were
oh
just
yeah. So just making
a
sure
machine.
not dehydrating. So yeah, those things are so critical. Oh, this has been the most amazing conversation. Thank you so much. And
Oh, it's
just
my
real
pleasure.
talk, like, if you were wondering and you needed some answers, today was the day. Today is where we hit you with it.
It was really fun.
And
Yeah.
I just feel so validated. I'm just kidding.
Good. I know. I know. You're doing so many things right. And your listeners are so lucky to have you as a source of inspiration and insight. And yeah, yeah, just, it's been fun. I listened to the Nikki podcast, the last one, an endocrinologist from the
It's
UK.
amazing.
She's so good. And yeah, so just what you're bringing to your audience is just, first class. So I feel really grateful to be
Thank
on today.
you. Well, it's been such a pleasure and such an honor. Where would you love us to find you? Where would you love us to
Oh,
cue in?
yeah, I working on my dissertation. So
Yes, good. Congratulations.
oh, thank you.
When's the finish line? Is it this year?
Um, it should probably the end of the year. I realistically, by the time I get my committee together, it's probably going to be, early next year, but yeah, getting close,
Oh my
which is
gosh.
exciting. Yeah.
Ooh.
But yeah, LinkedIn. So just Kristen Holmes, Whoop. I should pop up in a search engine. And then, Kristen, I'm going to say underscore Holmes 2126 is my Instagram handle. And I post a ton of stuff about workouts and research
I
and,
love your Instagram, so I will make sure we have
oh,
it because I
thank
didn't
you.
know the handle. I just know it's you, right? I couldn't remember what the handle was, so I'll have the handle there. I'll have LinkedIn there. I'll have Whoop there if people want to go and check it out. I do love it. I love, especially for women, and men and women, but I always say I serve everyone by serving women. To have this real time data that we can make real time changes is just
Yeah.
game changing. We deserve that so that
Yeah.
we can just feel our very best. And this is, I, as disciplined as I am, as committed as I am,
Hmm.
I will lie to myself. I will, if I don't
Yeah.
have the hard data to just tell me what's up. So
And the science is there, and that's
mhm.
what's exciting is we really don't have to guess. anymore, about just how our health is trending. And I think that's the exciting opportunity with data.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of
Thank you.
course.